Good afternoon and welcome to Bayou Bets here on bet.NOLA.com. Zach Ewing along with Spencer the Guru Urquhart here on this Monday, April 11th. We've got a lot of NBA to get to. We're going to recap the Masters, talk a little baseball, even some NFL. Caesars Sportsbook, our sponsor, has Defensive Player of the Year odds, so that's coming your way as well. Lot to get to, Spencer.
Right. Yeah, those were interesting. Those Defensive Player of the Year odds I won't spoil it, but it had a name on there that I did not expect to see. So I'll be ready to get into that.
That in the business is what we call a teaser, and you will have to wait until the end of the show to find that out because we have a few things to get to first, including a new promo at Caesars Sportsbook, the official odds partner of bet.nola.com. And this one's pretty good. You bet $20, you open a new account. It's for new customers only. You open a new account, bet just $20, and you get $200 in free bets. That is new for the month of April. You see JB Smoove with the baseball bat. That guy just looks cool doing everything.
Yeah, they got Caesar with the baseball bat now. You had to freshen him up now that March Madness is over.
That's right. And so you get $200 in free bets that you basically can use on anything you want. Once you bet it, if you win it, it's yours. You can withdraw it. You can, you can pay for that weekend trip that you've been wanting to take, or do whatever you want to do, or just leave it in there and keep betting. All you got to do is bet $20. You get that bonus money. So go to NOLA.com/Caesars to sign up for that. So the Masters was this weekend, and I can't say that it was a surprise that Scottie Scheffler won because Scottie Scheffler's been winning everything lately. But he was 16-1 to win the tournament. So it paid off quite handsomely. If you took the world number one at 16-1, I mean, he was like the fourth favorite. He's behind Jon Rahm. He's behind Justin Thomas. He's behind several guys. And Scottie Scheffler just dominated. I mean, he ended up winning by 3. But as we were talking about there at the end, Spencer, he had a 5-shot lead going to 18 and kind of screwed around and lost 2 of those shots by 4-putting on 18. But he got the job done.
Right. Yeah, he had it wrapped up. So even though he kind of choked on 18, it didn't matter. It was just kind of nerve-wracking. It's like, man, you want to go out in style, put it away easy, but he kind of took his time there. But yeah, he still won by 3 strokes. So big dub for the world number one there, and Scottie Scheffler. Rory McIlroy made a huge charge, though. He gave him all he could handle, but yeah, Scheffler had such a huge lead that it didn't end up making a difference as far as winning. But big,
yeah, I mean, go ahead, Spencer.
Oh, yeah, but big, really impressed by McIlroy. He damn near pulled it off.
he was trying to make it interesting. Cam Smith did make it interesting. Really, the whole final round turns. As you see, Cam Smith finished tied for third there with Shane Lowry and ended up 5 shots back. Wasn't a factor by the time they got to the end. But at the beginning of the day, Cam Smith is only 3 shots behind Scheffler, and he birdies the first 2 holes while Scheffler pars. So it's a 1-stroke lead at that point. Scheffler was at 9 under. Cam Smith was at 8 under. They go to number 3, and they're in somewhat similar spots in the rough off the green. And both of them are going to have, in fact, Smith was arguably in a better spot than Scheffler was. Well, Scheffler goes first and holes his chip. I mean, it was like one of these really hard bouncing chips. It wasn't like, the real purdy ones that roll on the green like McIlroy had on 18. But it hit the flagstick and went in. And you're like, oh my God, that's a birdie for Scheffler. Now he's got a 3-shot lead. And then Cam Smith mishit his, ended up bogeying, and all of a sudden a 2-shot lead was a 4-shot lead. Right where it started again. I guess it was a 4-shot lead to start the day, and it was down to 2 by the time they got to 3. And you think, the way they're at, this could easily be a 1-shot lead by the end of this hole, and instead Scheffler got it back to 4. So yeah, that's a lot. Like that it changed all right there. Scheffler had the advantage. McIlroy tried to make it interesting. Then Scheffler tried to make it interesting with the 4-putt, and as Uncle Big Nick, our resident golf expert, tells us, like, somebody went from first to second and lost the millie on that 4-putt because it was a double bogey. If you had Scheffler, you lose points, of course, in fantasies. Obviously, you still wanted him in your lineup, but that's pretty tough, man. When he misses, he kind of laughed at it, but somebody else was not laughing at it.
Right? Yeah, because he should have made that. It was like right there, and I think it had to have been nerves. It had to have been. I mean, because you were that close to the green jacket and just needed to knock that in, and yeah, it was nerves.
Yeah,
it was. I could describe it.
It was something else, man. As we look at the rest of those results, a good one for the Bet.NOLA crew. Justin Thomas sneaks into the top 10. He was tied for 8th. Only 9 guys were under par. So if you were under par, you were top 10. And Justin Thomas gets there. That cashed a plus 125 ticket for us. Colin Morikawa played real well. He chipped in on 18 as well. And so as we look forward to, for our purposes, a lot of big golf tournaments coming up. The Zurich Classic in New Orleans is coming up in 2 weeks. The PGA Championship, which is in Southern Hills outside Tulsa, Oklahoma, that's next month. And then, of course, the U.S. Open is in June. So lots of good golf coming up, and then the British Open in July. So basically every month from here to the rest of the summer is a good one. And we'll keep going on the golf.
Oh, yeah. Had to hit up Uncle Big Nick for those picks.
That's right. We'll see what happens. But, a lot of those guys that we said do well, some of them do, some of them don't. But that's the way golf betting works. If you hit on enough who do well, the juice is such that you're going to make money, even though a guy like, I don't know, if you had Bryson DeChambeau, right? He was terrible, and you were going to lose everything you bet on him. Joaquin Niemann started out the weekend really well. He faded badly at the finish, and so you lost everything you bet on him. But if you also had some money on some of these guys who finished top 10, you're doing okay. You're doing just fine. Spencer, I do have to ask you, what did you think of Tiger? He gets through the weekend. That's the positive. He played all 72 holes. I know a lot of people probably did not think he could do that. The bad news is on Saturday and Sunday, he was clearly outmatched. Mental and physical fatigue was part of that, I'm sure, and kind of faded. Of those who made the cut, he was one of the bottom finishers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was still impressive to see him finish. So I'd say, considering just how catastrophic his injuries were, it was still a win in his book to try to. Well, I mean, I'm sure he's wanted to win it itself, being how competitive he is. But big picture wise, it was a win because it was looking like there for a while he might not ever be able to play golf again. So the fact that he was able to finish there and make the cut was pretty positive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as people were saying, this is the common line. I'm just spouting the cliche at this point, but there was a chance his right leg was going to be amputated. And instead he's back playing major championship golf just over a year later. So pretty impressive, just the fact that he was out there and frankly was pretty competitive. He was in the top 10 at the end of the first round, still made the cut at the end of the second round, was still right there being competitive. And then, like I said, I just think at some point your body is not used to that by the end of the tournament. So, and yeah, as Nick said, I mean, one thing that really left him was putting on Saturday and Sunday. And that was the thing you thought, okay, he can do. And that's why I say not just physical exhaustion, but maybe mental exhaustion too. You're just not used to the pressure of a major tournament. You're not used to the way your body feels. And on Saturday and Sunday, it kind of seemed like it wore on him a little bit. So Tiger finishes down, but he is back. And I don't know, maybe he's got another one somewhere in him down the road, another major championship.
It's possible. I mean, it's going to be tough considering his age and everything and all the injuries he's gone through, but I wouldn't put it past him. He's definitely the GOAT.
All right, we will switch gears here on Bayou Bets and talk a little NBA basketball. The regular season finishes up last night. We're going to have Christian Clark, the Pelicans beat writer from the Times-Picayune, on here in just a few minutes. But Spencer, let's take a look at some of the odds, starting with the Pelicans. They play Wednesday night against the Spurs, listed as 5-point favorites, minus 200 on the money line. They are expected. There's no other way to put it. They're expected to get through this first play-in game and then get to the number 8 seed game on Friday.
Right. Yeah, this could be a little tricky though. The Spurs or Coach Pop, I mean, they're always tough. It's not going to be an easy one there. So I don't know if I really like the Pels too much as 5-point favorites. I think the Pels will get it done, but the Spurs are going to give them all they can handle. It's going to be an interesting game.
Yeah, and that line opened up at 5.5 when the matchup was first. I think it was Saturday night. It was locked in that it would be Spurs at Pelicans, and the line opened up at 5.5, and so it's ticked down a little bit already to 5. We'll see what it does over the next couple of days. But that game at 8:30 p.m. on Wednesday, and we'll get Christian's insights on this in a few minutes. The other play-in games, they start on Tuesday, and I like to call the first 2 play-in games, and the other 2 are play-out games because the loser is out. But the other 2 play-in games on Wednesday, starting with the Nets, and they're big favorites against the Cavs, and it makes sense. I mean, the Nets, look, You look at this list, and I say there's two teams that the rest of the playoff field is rooting against, and that's the Nets and that's the Clippers. Because if those teams get into the playoffs, they're dangerous, especially if the Clippers hang around long enough for Kawhi Leonard to get back. He's practicing with the team again. Those are legitimate championship contenders if they can get through the play-in round.
Yeah, those are definitely. I mean, the Nets with KD and Kyrie can always be dangerous. I'm thinking I normally don't like betting the Nets because I feel like their lines get juiced too much, and this one might be a little much there at 8.5. But I just don't see the Cavs coming anywhere close to getting past them, especially with the news of Jared Allen looking like he's not going to be able to make it for that one. So yeah, I like the Nets to win big here, and then the Clippers Timberwolves, very, very interesting. I don't know what to think of this one because I mean the Timberwolves are very, very solid there with Karl Towns and company, but the Clippers with Paul George back, that's a dangerous team, and they seem to be able to do well with pretty much anybody. Very well coached. So if I had to bet that, I'd probably say I'd take the Clippers with the points.
Yeah, it's a tough one. That one opened at just 2.5. It's now 3. And then the Hornets and Hawks on Wednesday. The way this works, for those who don't know, the winner of those Tuesday games gets the number 7 seed and is in the playoffs, and they'll face the number 2 seed. So either the Cavs or the Nets will advance, and they'll face the Celtics in the first round of the proper playoffs. The winner of Clippers and T-Wolves faces the Memphis Grizzlies, the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. Then the loser of that game advances to what's called the 8 seed game. That's on Friday. And they will face the winner of the Wednesday games. So you have Hornets at Hawks on Wednesday, and then, of course, Spurs at Pelicans. And so the Wednesday winners face the Tuesday losers on Friday, and those winners move on to face the 1 seed. And so the Eastern Conference 8 seed will face the Miami Heat. The Western Conference 8 seed will face the Phoenix Suns. But yeah, as you mentioned, Spencer, that Cavs team has not been the same since Jared Allen went down with injury, especially defensively. And so I don't know if he's not going to be back. Not only do I not see them beating the Nets, I think they're in danger of then losing the Friday game as well.
Right, yeah. Then because the Hornets and Hawks can both play. I mean, they both got explosive scores there. Trae Young with the Hawks and LaMelo Ball, and they had multiple guys with the Hornets. Bridges is good, so yeah, I don't see the Garland's good though for the Cavs, so they could survive. But I would think the Hornets or Hawks could very well knock them out.
Yeah, I mean, listen, maybe it's just recency bias. This is probably not an analytical thing, but thinking back to what Trae Young did in the playoffs last year, it's going to be hard for me to bet against that guy in a win or go home situation. Especially, okay, it's one thing if they're facing, a top level team, Miami, Boston, Philadelphia, Milwaukee. But if they're facing Charlotte or Cleveland, I think I'm going to bet on Trae Young.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought he was going to do a little better this year. He's got good numbers, but it just seems like he's been real up and down, really erratic. But yeah, if he can channel that postseason magic he had last year, they could be dangerous.
Well, here to talk with us about the Pelicans specifically and about the NBA playoffs in general is Times-Picayune Pelicans beat writer Christian Clark. Christian, thanks for being here, man.
What's up, guys? How we doing?
How's it going, Christian? Doing good, man.
We talked to Christian a few weeks ago, said, okay, what is success for the 21-22 Pelicans? And he said, hey, if they make the play-in with all the trouble that's gone on with Zion Williamson, the injuries they've had, you make the play-in, that's a success. Well, here they are. So do you stand by that, Christian? I mean, can they look back at this and say, even if they lose Wednesday night, this year is at worst a wash?
Yeah, I think they can. I mean, look, they lost more than 100 games combined with Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram. Like Zion generated all the headlines, and rightfully so, but Brandon Ingram only playing 55 games kind of went under the radar. So to get into this play-in, I think, was a win for them. And I think for Pelicans fans too is especially sweet because they beat the Lakers all 3 times, and it's looking like they're going to get the Lakers top 10 pick. There's a 99.6% chance they're going to get that pick, which only conveys if it goes in the top 10. And they basically have a 1 in 4 chance that pick jumps up to the top 4. So I think that's really like the sweetener for Pelicans fans. Like not only, were they able to recover from the bad start, but they kind of, played an important role in like sending the Lakers, to their graves, basically.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if they're playing with house money, then to use a betting term on Wednesday, what do you think of that game? I mean, the Spurs have not been the team they've matched up the best with this season. They're 5-point favorites. How do you handicap that?
Yeah, I mean, I looked at that this morning and I saw 5, and I was like, that feels like a lot. And then I thought about it and I was like, well, not really. I mean, I'm just terrified of the Greg Popovich factor. Like Willie Green is a first-time head coach. He's the third youngest head coach in the NBA. Like, I think the least experienced head coach in the NBA. And obviously, you're just going up against an absolute legend. But I mean, I think the Pelicans have the clear edge in just top end talent. I mean, the Spurs have DeJounte Murray, a guy who was an all-star, a really, really good player. But I mean, I think the Pelicans have two of the best 3 players in the game, with CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram, and Jonas Valanciunas is a really good player. So, I think the Pelicans have the edge in talent. It's just like, oh gosh, are they going to get psyched out by like Pop, Spurs, mystique? And does that mystique even exist anymore?
Yeah, I don't know that it does, but well, maybe for Willie Green it does. I mean, he's probably of the age where Pop was dominating the league. Look, so Brandon Ingram, we mentioned Zion missed all 82 games. Brandon Ingram missed 21, most of those here in the last 2 months. What's his status? I mean, can we consider him 100%? We know he's going to play on Wednesday.
Yeah, I asked Willie before the game last night if the play-in was tomorrow, meaning Monday, would he play? He was like, well, I hate to get into hypotheticals, but he basically said yes. He was like, look, our plan is for him to play. Ingram missed 10 games in a row with the strained right hamstring. He missed the last 3 games of the regular season with what they said was right hamstring soreness, and he played in 5 games in between that. But I mean, I think he's going to go. Like I've seen him, playing one-on-one with Corey Brewer. Like he looks fine when he's running and jumping and cutting. When you just watch him on the sideline right now. So I think he's going to be fine.
And now that we're in the playoffs, there's no such thing as a back-to-back anymore. So you get that day off no matter what. And you'd like to think the Pelicans will advance to play on Friday. And to that end, we talked just before you came on, Christian, about sort of the play-in format. What do you make of it? I kind of like it. I mean, I know it's a little bit gimmicky, but I think it keeps everybody playing longer in the regular season. You have something tangible to play for. And this week's really exciting in my eyes.
Man, I'm with you. I like it too. I mean, like in a normal season, these last 2 weeks for the Pelicans would have been like, we're just playing to basically like get better odds in the lottery. And it wasn't that way at all. Like these last couple of weeks would have been meaningless, under the old format for the Pelicans. Like they're 10 games under 500, like they did a really nice job of recovering from that bad start. But like, if you just look at the record overall, I mean, that is obviously is not good enough to like get you into postseason play in a normal year.
Sure.
So, I mean, I think the NBA needs to do something to try to curtail tanking. And this does to a degree. I mean, you're going to always have a handful of tankers like Portland, Oklahoma City, a couple of those teams this year, but it really did, help that issue a little bit, I think.
Clippers and Timberwolves are both, either one would be a pretty salty opponent for Friday's game. Pelicans would be on the road. They would be an underdog against either one. Either of those matchups you think is easier for them? They did beat the Clippers 2 out of 3 this year, I believe.
Yeah, I think the Clippers would be, but they do have Paul George back now, which scares me a little bit. And Ty Lue is another one of those like coaches I'm just kind of terrified to go up against in like postseason playoffs play. Like I think Ty Lue might be the best coach in the entire game right now, and like he's just shown. Like I don't think there's any coach who's more adaptable either. Like he'll just try crazy stuff in the middle of a playoff game, and like I mean I don't know. It just worries me a little bit going up against him. But like I think the Timberwolves are clearly just a better team, even with Paul George there. So I would rather them face the Clippers, and I mean I think that's the most likely outcome and the one I'm predicting.
For sure, man. So Christian, of CJ McCollum's, I know had a lot of playoff experience, but overall the Pels are a pretty young team. So just how big is it having a guy like him who's been in these kind of moments.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think if you look at like the Pelicans' regular rotation players, I mean, CJ and Jonas Valanciunas, like those are, you know, I think the only two guys with like a bunch of playoff experience. I mean, CJ's a guy who's been to the Western Conference Finals with the Portland Trailblazers before. I mean, they made the playoffs 7, 8 consecutive seasons with them, something like that. So, I feel a lot more confident in the Pelicans going to this game with him on board than I did, with the roster before he was here. But yeah, man, I mean, he's just been unbelievable in these 25 games with the Pelicans. Like I had high hopes, and he's kind of exceeded what I thought he was capable of.
Scott Kushner wrote a column earlier this week about how the Pelicans got here after that 3-16 start. It's just totally lost in October and November to now being not just in the play-in, but honestly, they've been playing like one of the NBA's better, maybe top 10 teams over the last 2 months. Was there a turning point for you? Scott's point was that it all happened sort of slowly. Did you notice a point? I mean, because they were playing better before McCollum got here. It's easier to point to that. But looking from the outside in, I think it started before that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I kind of look at it like 2 different points. I mean, they had this game after they were 3-16 where they played the Wizards, and Willie Green threw Josh Hart and Herb Jones in the starting lineup, and that was a lineup combination that worked. Like he found a 5 that worked. Like Josh Hart started getting more minutes, Herb Jones started getting more minutes, and that was kind of when the turnaround started. And then I think when they got CJ, like they went up a level, even more. I mean, if you just look at the record with Ingram and CJ in the lineup after the All-Star break, I think it's 8-2, 9-2, and the net rating after the All-Star break too. They're in the top 10. So, I mean, I think like you can make a case that when CJ and Brandon are both healthy, like they might be legitimately good. I mean, they've only had both of them for I don't know, 15 games, something like that. But those are kind of the 2 points I look at.
Question needs to be asked, and I'm sure you're tired of answering it. Is there any chance we see Zion Williamson playing a game at some point this week or beyond? This season?
This season. Okay. I think highly, highly unlikely we see him in either of these play-in games. Based on the conversations I've had in the past few days, I think if the Pelicans were somehow able to win both of these games, get to a first-round series against the Phoenix Suns, maybe there's a possibility we could see him then. But I don't think we're seeing him in either of these play-in games.
Okay. What about moving forward? I mean, let's look at next season, because this is a team with pretty much everybody coming back next year, and then you add Zion to that mix. You add a top 10 draft pick most likely to that list. How does Zion fit on this roster, and how do you handicap the Pels' chances next year?
Yeah, I mean, like on paper, it's a really interesting, talented team to me. I mean, we'll see if it works out that way. It rarely does. But I mean, like I wrote a story the other day. Like I think, like if everyone's healthy and bought in, like I think they literally have a chance to be the best team in franchise history. And there haven't been a ton of great teams. This is obviously not a storied franchise. Like, this franchise has never advanced past the second round in the playoffs. But to me, the idea of rolling out a starting 5 of CJ McCollum, Herb Jones, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and Jonas Valanciunas, like that's a lot of talent, especially on the offensive end. And, you've got some nice pieces off the bench, Trey Murphy, Jose Alvarado, Larry Nance. Like, I like that team on paper a lot. But, yeah, it's just on paper.
Yeah, and then add a top 10 pick to that too.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, more depth to it, or you can swing a trade or whatever you might need to do. All right, Christian, before we let you go, let's take a look at the playoff series, the ones that we know anyway, and some of the odds for them. There we go. And 76ers were actually a stronger favorite. Of course, Matisse Thybulle can't play when they're on the road in this series. He's not vaccinated. Bucks are big favorites. The Warriors, Nuggets, interesting series. I know you follow the Nuggets. And then Jazz Mavericks, the price is off because we don't know the status of Luka Doncic and his calf injury right now.
Yeah, I think Nuggets Warriors is really interesting because, I mean, the Warriors are, I mean, they're more talent, obviously, like 1 through 10. But I think their biggest weakness as a team is that they can kind of get beat up by talented offensive centers, and obviously that's the Nuggets' biggest strength. Like they have the most talented center on the offensive end in the entire game. So, how do they stop Jokic? Like even if Jokic goes insane, like 35, 10, and 10, like can the Nuggets even win then? Do they have enough? I don't know. And then, man, Raptors 76ers is really interesting too, because James Harden has not looked good. It has not looked good so far, after that trade. And it's like he's facing a lot of pressure. I mean, I think he's like, one of the players facing the most pressure in the playoffs to perform and do well. Like it's gonna be ugly if it doesn't go well in the playoffs for the 76ers.
Yeah, I mean, I look at that price and I think there's a lot of smart people who maybe think it won't, because if you were just creating odds in your head, you'd have the 76ers as a stronger favorite than that, I think. Spencer, what do you think? Let's bring those prices back up. Does the guru see any upsets here?
Yeah, I like the Nuggets there because, I mean, Curry's probably, if he's back, he might not be his old self, be rusty a little bit coming off an injury. And yeah, and the Warriors, I know they've got more depth, but with Jokic, man, it's just the Nuggets have that superstar, and I don't see the Warriors been able to slow him down. So maybe their depth will prevail, but I would throw a little bit on the Joker in Denver.
And by the way, since this slide was made up, they have hung a price at Caesars for Jazz and Mavericks. It's actually the Jazz, which does not have home court. They're favored at -145, and the Mavericks plus 125. And if anything, that tells me that they think Luka's going to miss some time.
There was like an injury expert who put up the stat last night. Like he keeps this whole database of like calf strains, and I think like the average missed time for a calf strain, it varies, but it's anywhere between like 3 and 16 days in the regular season. So yeah, I mean, obviously not great to have that injury going into the postseason, especially when you depend so heavily on that guy. I mean, like they don't have another star to like carry the load to get them through that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, and now if Dallas survives, Luka may be able to come back for the second round. But if I'm the Suns, I'm pretty happy with the way things are shaping up, because the Warriors and Nuggets and Grizzlies, who have been red hot, are all on the other side of the bracket. And then whoever wins between the Clippers and Minnesota is on the other side of the bracket. So it kind of sets up for them to make another run.
I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's kind of like, it feels like it's now or never for the Suns too, because if you look at the Nuggets, like they're probably getting, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. back next season. I mean, we'll see about MPJ and his back, but the Clippers too, like Kawhi Leonard is probably coming back this season. Like there are some teams who are, stocked with a lot of talent who are just down this year. So, if there's ever a time to do it, it's this year if you're Phoenix.
And then in the Eastern Conference, we could easily obviously don't have the series settled yet, but Nets and Celtics is a conference finals type series that could be in the first round.
Yeah, that's going to be incredible. I mean, if you just look at the Nets record with Durant, like it's really, really solid. Like I understand why, some teams were trying to avoid them early in the bracket. But yeah, that's going to be incredible. I mean, especially, like the Robert Williams thing too. Like that was really significant to me. I mean, I think like if he was fine, I mean, maybe I would have like picked Boston to go to the finals. Like I like their chances a lot, but that really changes things for them, I think.
Yeah. So Christian, I gotta ask you about the Grizzlies, man. I don't know how they do it. They have these role players and Jaws back, but they just look so freaking good. Like they just dominate people. Like, do you think that's a team that could be a potential finals contender?
I'm a Grizz believer. I know like they're not the most experienced. I mean, like they played in the bubble play-in, won the play-in last year, but I'm a Grizz believer, man. I mean, like, I think the question for them is, can they score when the game slows down? I think they're 22nd in half court efficiency. I think they can do enough, like with Ja, with Desmond Bane in the half court. And I just like the way I mean, I just think the way they play is fun too. Like they just completely dominate the interior of the paint, and then they just get on the break and like dunk on your head. I love it. I mean, I don't think there's any team I enjoyed watching more this year than them.
It'd be a real interesting matchup if it's Memphis and Minnesota, honestly, because you have Towns in the paint and how Memphis would counteract that. But anyway, it's setting up well. And Kristen, we appreciate your time. Tell you what, if the Pelicans have a good week, we may talk to you next week.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. How are you guys feeling about Wednesday?
I think they survive Wednesday. I don't, when we talk about point spread, 5 point, I don't know. Don't know if I feel that strong, but I do think the Pelicans survive Wednesday. I expect, and maybe this is a question for you too. I mean, I expect that arena to be full on Wednesday and a good atmosphere.
Yeah, I think it's going to be crazy. I mean, I think they already sold out. Maybe last night. I mean, but I think the best atmospheres I've seen since I've covered the team is my third season, where the 80 return game and Zion's debut, and I expect it to top both of those.
And as far as Friday goes, I would be less optimistic. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, get that.
That's the easy answer, but that's probably the right one. All right, Christian Clark, Pelicans beat writer for the Times-Picayune. You can read his stuff on NOLA.com. He will have you covered this week for the play-in game or games and then beyond. Thank you, Christian.
Thanks, fellas.
Thanks, Christian.
So Christian Clark, always good to have him on. You're watching Bayou Bets on bet.nola.com and our Facebook and YouTube pages. Feel free to leave your comments or questions, and we will get to them as they come in. But yeah, Spencer, I mean, I think it sounds obvious to say, I think the odds are right in this case. I think the Pelicans win that game on Wednesday. Don't think they survive Friday.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, for Wednesday, I'm gonna say Pels by 6. So I'm not feeling too good about them covering, but I think they'll be able to do it barely. So I wouldn't lay a whole lot on them, but I'd maybe throw a little bit because I feel like they're more than capable of doing it with a healthy McCollum and Ingram. I don't think the pop effect will be able to top him, because I feel like McCollum's experience, he'll be able to be like a coach on the floor and help get him through that.
Yeah. And then Friday, honestly, I do think the Pelicans are playing like a top 10 or 12 team in the NBA, and I think they are when they're healthy, even without Zion. But the problem is, I think the Clippers and Timberwolves both also might be top 10 or 12 in the NBA with their current roster constructions, and they're at home. So if you put the Pelicans in the Eastern Conference, I would say, yeah, I think they get that 8 seed. I don't know that they would beat Brooklyn, but I think they could beat those other 3 teams. But with the way the Western Conference play-in is constructed, and they would have to go on the road, those are both tough matchups for me.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I think I'd rather Minnesota. I really do, even though they've got a better record than the Clippers. I feel like the Clippers are a team that they could be dangerous because with Paul George back, and they're very well coached. They could be a team that could give whoever they face, either the Grizzlies or Suns, a little bit of trouble. Where Minnesota, they played well throughout the year, but they just don't have a whole lot of experience. Karl Anthony Towns is really good, but he hadn't really had much postseason experience. So I think I'd rather them. Clippers could be. I don't. That's a team that's not one I'd want to play right now, especially if I'm one of those top 2. I'd want no part of LA.
And I mentioned to Christian, I thought the bracket really opened up well for the Suns. Having said that, whoever they get as an 8 seed is going to be better than your typical 8 seed. I mean, the Suns should win that series, don't get me wrong, and they'll be favored to do that. They're not going to be, like we saw the Bucks are minus 900 favorites. They're not going to be minus 900 favorites, and that's whether it's the Timberwolves or the Clippers. Maybe they would be against the Spurs if the Spurs somehow got that 8 seed. But not the Pelicans, not the Clippers, and not the Timberwolves, I don't think would be that big of underdogs in that series.
Yeah, boy, I tell you what, the Bucks got lucky with that draw. I feel like they got real lucky because they were supposed to get the 2, it was looking like, but then they ended up at 3. And the Bulls, I was liking the Bulls there for a while, but the Bulls have really just run out of gas down the stretch. DeRozan's magical runs kind of run out. Levine's been injured. Their Lonzo Ball's done. So yeah, Milwaukee got really lucky. If they can, they might be able to go back to the finals. I mean, the Nets and the Celtics will give them trouble whoever they get, in the next round, but they get a really good break as far as not having to be challenged too bad in the first.
I mean, if they were the 2 seed, they were going to probably have to face the Nets and Celtics. So now they've only got to beat one of those 2 teams. But you know what? Full credit to the Celtics, who went out and they beat Memphis yesterday to get the 2 seed. Certainly didn't have to do that. They didn't have to play starters. They could have, quote unquote, tanked that game. I don't know if you really go out and tell your players to lose, but you just don't play your better players. You lose that game and accept the 3 seed. But Boston went out and played for it and said, we don't care. We'll face anybody. And maybe that'll cost them and they'll get knocked out by Brooklyn. But, full credit to them for going out there and doing it.
Yeah, I think that was smart because now they'll get, if they're at that 2 seed, and if they get past Brooklyn, they'll get home court against the Bucks. So I definitely don't blame them for trying to get it.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is if one of these series goes 7, it's now at the Garden. So Boston has that advantage. Elsewhere in the world of sports, as we continue on here on Bayou Bets, baseball's opening weekend is finished. I just highlighted a few win totals here. These are still available to bet at Caesars Sportsbook, by the way. If you download the app, you can bet over or under. All of them are juiced to -115. And I got to admit, this was totally random the way I chose some of these teams. I picked some of the better teams in the league. I had to pick Spencer's Cardinals. I had to pick Jim Derry's Cubs. I picked some of the teams you get on regional TV here. I don't know. I mean, some of them I just like. I like the Marlins over 76 a lot. The Mets have already gone up from 87.5 to 89.5 after a strong opening weekend. I really like the Mets under. I just think eventually injuries are going to get that team. I mean, listen, they played the Nationals the first weekend. They're not very good. Right. Any thoughts you have here, Spencer?
Yeah, I would take the Mets under and the Cubs under as well. They had a pretty good start against Milwaukee, but I'm not buying that. So I'll definitely go under on those 2. As far as overs, I kind of like my Cardinals at the over. I know they won 2 out of 3 against Pittsburgh. Didn't look too good yesterday, but 85.5. I think the Cards could win. I don't know if they'll quite reach 90, but I think they'll win somewhere between 85 and 90 games. And then the Braves at 91.5, I think should go over considering their division. It's not terrible, but they got the Nationals that are kind of a whooping boy, and the Marlins are.
That division's pretty tough to me outside Washington, but Atlanta's a good team.
Right, that's what I was saying. Atlanta, they're a solid team, and their lineup's scary. Their pitching is pretty solid too, but their lineup, they've just got their outfield so strong, especially when they get Acuna back. So I'd take the over with them.
The team that one I did not put on here that I really like is the Rays over, and I think they're at 89.5, and that's also a very good division, obviously. But boy, they're always good. I mean, I don't think they've failed to win 90 games in 6 or 8 years, and that's playing in tough divisions every single year. So I don't really understand that line.
Right, yeah. And then the Yankees at 91.5 probably would have to go under there. I know they've got a good lineup, but I don't like their pitching. I feel like their pitching, their rotation's very vulnerable outside of Garrett Cole. I mean, heck, even Garrett Cole didn't look too good on opening day. I know he should have a good year overall, but ever since that sticky stuff thing last year, he hadn't been quite the same. So I'd probably go to under with them.
Yeah, the thing about the Yankees, too, is that they have one of the better bullpens in baseball. So if those starters can just get them through 5 innings, they're in pretty good shape. But I don't know. We'll see. That's this interesting race, and we'll keep an eye on some of those win totals and playoff odds and all sorts of things throughout the Major League Baseball season. As I mentioned, you can get in on the action. Go to NOLA.com/Caesars and sign up today. You'll be supporting bet.NOLA.com. And you can get a bonus out of it too, a $200 bonus if you bet $20. Use promo code NOLAAPR as in April, or go to NOLA.com/Caesars, and that promo code will be automatically loaded for you. Bet 20, get 200 in bonus cash. Pretty good deal. All right, as promised, we're going to talk a little NFL futures action. We're going to try to pick one of these out pretty much every week on our shows. This week we've got Defensive Player of the Year. These odds just popped last week on Caesars. Your co-favorites, TJ Watt of the Steelers, he won it last year, along with Aaron Donald of the Rams, who won it in, I think, 2017, 2018, and 2020. So he's a 3-time winner. And they're followed closely by Myles Garrett of the Browns. Now, Spencer, you teased a price you could not believe. Is he a guy who's on our slide here, or is he a guy off the board?
No, I was saying about the Saints. I was surprised about some of the Saints that made it. The one that surprised me the most was Davenport, because he's got the potential, but he's yet to really put together a dominant season. So while I really like Marcus Davenport and what he could do, I'd prefer taking a shot on Cam Jordan there, since I think Cam still has another year or two of elite production in the tank.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, the Saints are a very good defensive team. They might have the best defense in the NFL. We'll see how they fill their last few holes, specifically at safety. But I don't know that they have the standout who's going to have the numbers to win this award. Like I think I'm fading all of those Saints. They're all very good players, and put together they make an elite unit. But I don't know that there's an Aaron Donald or a TJ Watt or a Myles Garrett or a Micah Parsons, somebody who is going to, like Marshawn Lattimore. He's a great cornerback. To win NFL Defensive Player of the Year as a corner, you have to have double-digit interceptions, maybe even more. And quite frankly, opponents don't throw to the guy very much. I mean, he's not going to get double-digit interceptions because he doesn't have that many chances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if Paulson Adebo takes a big step this year, he might get a few more, being that they'll have to be forced to throw to his side a little bit. But yeah, it's just hard for corners to get a whole lot of picks, especially ones like him that have such a strong reputation.
Yeah, absolutely true. So as we move forward, we'll be back on Thursday with At the Book at 4:00. Actually, it'll be Spencer and Jim and Devin. I'll be sitting this one out. And they'll talk a little bit of everything, a little golf, a little NASCAR, find out how the Pelicans did on Wednesday, and hopefully be looking ahead to Friday. But as we're sort of transitioning into a new, almost slower season, but it is NBA playoff time, and I'm sure that'll be most of the talk over the next few weeks, Spencer.
Yeah, well, and the draft. Don't forget about the draft. It's only, I think, 17, 18 days away. It'll be here before we know it. I've been in the lab watching film, getting my mock drafts going. I love draft season. I just really enjoy looking at it, trying to do the mocks, and then seeing where these guys are going to end up for fantasy football purposes.
Yeah, I think we need to have an NFL draft preview show with yourself and Devin Jackson, the film rats, if you will.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
by the way,
Devin on. I need to reach out to him about being on the podcast, because I want to get into that. I love watching the film.
Absolutely. So the draft does start on April the 28th, I believe it is. Thursday the 28th. It goes through Saturday the 30th. And by the way, Caesars does not have NFL draft odds up in Louisiana. You will see them in some other places. There's a question about regulations, from what I understand, but they do expect to have odds on at least some draft props up by the time the draft rolls around. So we will certainly be talking about that too. In the meantime, sign up at NOLA.com/Caesars. Get your bonus. For Spencer the Guru Urquhart and our producer, Patrick McGee, our thanks also to Christian Clark for coming on the show, dropping some knowledge on the Pelicans and the NBA playoffs with us. I'm Zach Ewing. This has been Bayou Bets.